Hello everyone, so this video is going to be a little bit different to what I normally do. I have succumbed to the power of making a list video. I know, a heathen I am. I wanted to make a video about my favourite lens that I never use. The lens in question is this. It's the Canon 50mm f1.8. I bought it for about £50. I think it's about £100 now. It's called the Nifty 50 for a reason. It is an absolutely phenomenal lens and I just never use it. So I wanted to go into a bit of depth about why it's my favourite lens and why I never use it. Because it's likely that if you're looking to buy another lens, because you've just got into the hobby, you would be looking at buying one of these babies because it's really cheap and it's really good. If you enjoy this video, please hit like, please hit subscribe, it really helps me out. Onto the list. Number one, it's the most basic one. It's the one we all think about before we buy something new, before we convince our better halves this is going to be worth it, it's going to make my life better. The price. This lens is priced right now at £100. This is the Mark 1 version. They've got a Mark 2 out right now. I bought it for £50 10 years ago, or it might be my second one actually. I think I broke another one. This is my second one. It's irrelevant, I don't know why I'm telling you that. This lens is probably the best lens in terms of image quality that I own, and yet I think it's almost 10 times cheaper than my most expensive lens, which is the one I'm shooting on right now, the 2470 f4 IS USM L, etc. This one is an absolute scorcher in terms of price. Pay £50 and you get an amazing lens. You can probably pick it up second hand for £50, but, and this part's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but when you first buy your first camera, you know, you're kind of fresh, you haven't really thought much about it all, and it's all just kind of in one. But as soon as you buy a second lens, it's game over. My camera gear is worth more than my car. It's all downhill from there, guys, I'm just letting you know. I'm trying to do this video in Bath, but if you don't know, Bath is really busy and I don't want to walk around talking to my camera like a narcissistic maniac. So reason number two why this is my favourite lens. It forces you to be creative. So typically lenses are either a prime or a zoom. So a prime is where the focal length is fixed. It's always going to look the same through the viewfinder. And a zoom is where you can change it. With the 50mm prime, you're forced to be adaptive. You're going to have to move around the frame. You're going to have to physically move your body. You know, with the zoom lens, you can just kind of see something and go, oh, actually, I only like this bit. And so you just zoom into that bit, right? Yeah, with the prime, you have to move around. And, you know, it requires a bit more thought into your photography, which I've always enjoyed. You know, sometimes you get into the zone, but it's like autopilot and you're just shooting the same stuff. But as soon as you put that 50mm lens on, everything changes. And you have to think a bit about more, you have to think a bit more about what you're doing. And I like that. But I've been shooting so long that when I see something that I know that I like, and I see it in my mind, I just get the shot in the way that I know that I want to get the shot. I'm not really thinking much about it. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing or not, but I just feel like when I put that 50mm lens on, rather than thinking, wow, this is really cool because I'm able to think more about my photography, instead I'm just going, this is a bit of a pain in the bum. It's also worth mentioning that this lens is going to perform slightly differently on a crop sensor than a full frame sensor. If you don't know what those things are, Google them. Basically, on a full frame sensor, this is true 50mm, which looks a little bit like this, whereas on a typical 1.6 crop sensor, it's going to be zoomed in a little bit more, which looks a bit like this. So if you want something that performs more like a telephoto on a full frame, you want to get like an 85mm, but if you want something that's wide angle on a crop, you probably want something more like a 24mm. Just worth remembering. So reason number three is size and portability. I have a big camera, and I have a big camera by choice. I'm an absolute nerd for camera gear. I don't obsess about it, you know, I don't think if I don't have this camera or this lens, I'm never going to take good photographs. My camera's 10 years old and I love it. I enjoy the craft of cameras, I get joy out of using them. So, you know, I choose to carry my big camera around. But on days when photography is a byproduct of the day rather than the sole purpose, I enjoy having a smaller camera, you know. If I'm doing like a commercial shoot or something where I'm going to be shooting in portrait a lot, I stick that huge battery grip on because it makes my life easier. But when I'm just walking around a town for the day and, you know, I'm just getting snaps here and there, going from a giant conspicuous 2 kilogram camera to a 1 kilogram camera that doesn't look that much bigger than any other hobbyist camera is actually a pretty big deal. But I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this video. My camera's not that big. It's not so big that I don't want to use it, you know. The 24-70 isn't that big, it's not that heavy. I specifically chose the f4 over the f2.8 version so that it would be a bit smaller and it would be a bit more usable and be a bit more all-day walk around lens friendly. In my opinion, the benefit of having that 50mm lens is not worth foregoing all of the other good things about the other lenses. Reason number 4. One of the most exciting things about this lens is the aperture. It's got a really wide aperture of f1.8, meaning you can get a really shallow depth of field. If you think about stop, I'm not entirely sure how stops work when it comes to aperture. It's kind of like 2 or 3 stops less than my other equivalent lens, which is what's on now, the f4. Is there anything sexier than nailing the focus at f1.8 and throwing the rest of the background out of focus, especially when you're new to photography? It's so exciting because you don't get that with any other cameras because the sensor is so small. You don't get that shallow depth of field. With image processing technology the way it is now, with things like the Google Pixel that has that fantastic portrait mode where it recognizes your face and puts the rest of it all blurry, you don't get that really, like naturally. Whereas with a lens like the 1.8 50mm you do, and it's really exciting, it's really sexy when you take a picture of something and everything else is out of focus and you get that lovely bokeh or bokeh. How do you say that? Bokeh? Bokeh? Whatever, I don't even know what it means. But honestly, how much do I do that? Basically never. And when I do it, the lenses that I have suffice. I mostly shoot landscapes, and with landscapes, more often than not, you want a lot of it in focus. It's really not something I use very often. In fact, I can probably count on one hand the amount of times that I've been like, you know what, I really want this image to be predominantly out of focus. It's just not something I do. It's very exciting to start with, but for me, it's not that useful. If you are a portrait photographer or an events photographer, or you need fantastic performance in low light when you have moving subjects, a wide aperture is a must, you know. I prefer image stabilization for 90% of the stuff that I shoot. It's such a fringe case that I would need that really wide aperture. I get far more value out of image stabilization than I do a wide aperture. Reason number 5, it's the main one, the image quality. Above all, this lens, for the price, is mind-boggling. It's outstanding. I try not to be nitpicky, you know, and pixel peep and, you know, zoom in and look out for chromatic aberration and da-da-da. I know that with the 50mm lens, I don't even need to do that, because as long as I've nailed the focus, as long as the shutter speed is high enough and it's not blurry, I know that I've got the shot. It's ridiculous. If you've got a kit lens, you know, like an 1855 that comes with your camera, and you're looking for an upgrade in image quality, you cannot go wrong with a 50mm prime. It is unbelievably good value for what it offers. It's ridiculous. But my other lenses, it's not like they're rubbish. They all have their quirks. For example, the 24-70, it's got a bit of vignetting at a wide angle. There's some, you know, bits of chromatic aberration on all the lenses that I have. The distortion and the pin cushioning on the 2470 is more obvious, and the distortion on the 1740 is really obvious. You know, and the 50 is as minimalist, I guess, as a lens can be. I'm talking nonsense, I don't know. It's really good. My other lenses are also really good, so why would I use the 50 over anything else, really? I've taken some of my favourite sort of street photography images ever with the 50, but all of the photos that are my favourite images I take with other lenses, because those are the lenses I use. If you're looking for an upgrade on a basic lens, get the 50mm. As I said, it's my absolute favourite lens, and I just never use it. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and yeah, thanks very much.